1969. A young man named James Anderson found himself dropped into the humid heat of Vietnam. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as he stepped off the transport. He was just a boy, really, fresh out of high school. His eyes still held the innocence of youth, untainted by the horrors he was about to witness. He'd traded his small-town life for the jungle, the familiar faces for the unknown. The quiet streets of his hometown were a distant memory, replaced by the cacophony of the jungle. War was a harsh reality, a world away from the innocence of his youth. The sounds of gunfire and explosions were a stark contrast to the peaceful sounds of his childhood. Fear and uncertainty clung to him like the heavy air. Every step he took was filled with trepidation, every shadow a potential threat. Yet amidst the chaos, a part of him held on to hope, to the belief in the goodness of humanity. He clung to the memories of home, of family and friends as a lifeline.
The days blurred into a relentless cycle of patrols and fear. Each day felt like an eternity, the nights even longer. The jungle was alive with unseen dangers. Every rustle, every movement in the foliage could mean life or death. Every rustle of leaves sent shivers down my spine. The constant tension was unbearable, the fear ever present. The faces of my comrades, etched with exhaustion and apprehension, mirrored my own. We were all in this together, sharing the same fears and hopes. We were united by fear, by a shared sense of displacement in this alien land. The bond we formed was unbreakable, forged in the fires of war. I longed for home, for the comfort of normalcy. The thought of returning to my small town, to the life I once knew, kept me going. Writing letters home became my solace, a way to stay connected to the world I left behind. Each word was a promise to return, a vow to survive. As the sun set over the jungle, I held on to the hope that one day I would see my home again. The promise of a new day kept the darkness at bay.
Then came the day that forever seared itself into his memory. The air crackled with tension. An eerie silence hung over the jungle, a prelude to the storm. Suddenly, all hell broke loose. The enemy attacked with a ferocity that shook him to his core. The earth trembled under the barrage of artillery fire. The air grew thick with the stench of gunpowder and fear.
James and his unit fought back with everything they had, but we were outnumbered, outgunned. The jungle, once a source of unease, now offered the only semblance of protection.
I ran, adrenaline pumping through my veins, the screams of my comrades ringing in my ears. Disoriented and alone, I stumbled into a bombed-out village, the remnants of a peaceful life shattered around me.
The air was thick with smoke and dust. The stench of death hung heavy. As James caught his breath, his eyes fell upon a sight that pierced through the fog of war. A small boy, no more than 6 years old, huddled amidst the rubble. His clothes were torn, his face streaked with dirt and tears. He was all alone, surrounded by the debris of his world.
In that instant, the war faded away. All that mattered was the child, his eyes wide with terror, his small body trembling. My own fear momentarily forgotten, I knew I couldn't leave him to die. I cautiously approached the boy, my weapon lowered. I spoke softly, my words a mixture of broken Vietnamese and gestures of peace.
The boy, his name was Nguyen, looked up at James with a mixture of fear and hope. His eyes, wide and innocent, reflected the turmoil of the world around him. He was clutching a small wooden doll, the only possession he had left. This doll, worn and weathered, was a symbol of the life he once knew, a life now shattered by the ravages of war. James gently lifted the boy into his arms, his touch a silent promise of safety. The weight of the child was light, but the responsibility felt immense. He held him close, shielding him from the horrors that surrounded them. The sounds of gunfire and explosions seemed distant, as if the embrace created a small bubble of peace amidst the chaos. In the midst of the chaos, a bond formed, a testament to the enduring power of human connection. It was a bond that transcended language, culture, and the devastation of war.
For 2 days and 2 nights, we stayed hidden in the ruins of the village. The crumbling walls provided scant protection, but it was all we had. I shared my meager rations with Nguyen, a small comfort in the face of such loss. Each bite was a reminder of the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. We didn't speak the same language, but we understood each other's hearts. Our gestures, our shared glances spoke volumes more than words ever could. In the shared silence, a promise was made, a silent vow to protect the innocent. It was a promise born out of necessity, forged in the fires of conflict.
Silent, looking at James with trust and hope. His eyes, now filled with trust, met mine, and in that moment, I knew I had to keep my promise.
In that shared silence, a promise was made, a silent vow to protect the innocent. It was a promise that would stay with James forever, a reminder of the bond formed in the most unlikely of places. Finally, they were found by American troops. James ensured Nguyen's safety, placing him in the care of a nearby humanitarian organization. He then rejoined his unit, his heart heavy with the weight of his experiences. The war continued, but it was forever changed for James. He had glimpsed the human cost, the innocence lost.
When the war finally ended, I returned home a changed man. I carried the physical and emotional scars of battle. The memories of Vietnam, of Nguyen, haunted my dreams. I tried to rebuild my life, to find peace, but the war had left an indelible mark.
Years turned into decades. James built a life for himself, found love, started a family. Yet, the memories of that time, of the boy he saved, never truly faded. He often wondered what had become of Nguyen, if he had survived the war, if he had found peace. The thought of him, a beacon of hope in the darkest of times, stayed with him. James would often sit by the window, gazing out at the horizon, lost in thought. The war had taken so much from him, but it had also given him a purpose, a reason to believe in the goodness of humanity. He would tell his children stories of bravery and compassion, always ending with the tale of Nguyen, the boy who had touched his heart in ways words could never fully capture.
I often wondered what had become of Nguyen. Did he survive the war? Did he find peace? The thought of him, a beacon of hope in my darkest times, stayed with me. I would sit by the window, lost in thought, remembering the war and the boy who had touched my heart. I told my children stories of bravery and compassion, always ending with the tale of Nguyen. His memory was a reminder of the goodness that can be found even in the darkest of times.
Meanwhile, in Vietnam, Nguyen grew up. He carried the scars of war, the loss of his family, the memory of that fateful day etched into his being. But he also carried the kindness of a stranger, the act of compassion that had saved his life. He often thought of the American soldier, who had shown him mercy in the midst of madness. Nguyen's life was a testament to resilience. He rebuilt his life from the ashes, finding strength in the memory of that compassionate act. He would share his story with the younger generation, teaching them about the power of kindness and the importance of never losing hope, even in the face of unimaginable adversity.
I often thought of the American soldier who had shown me mercy in the midst of madness. His act of compassion saved my life and stayed with me all these years. I rebuilt my life, finding strength in his kindness. I shared my story with the younger generation, teaching them about the power of kindness and the importance of never losing hope. His memory was a beacon of light in my darkest times, a reminder that even in the midst of war, humanity can prevail.
In the early 1990s, a twist of fate brought them together.
A local Vietnamese American organization was hosting a reunion event for veterans and survivors of the war.
James, compelled by a force he couldn't ignore, decided to attend.
I hoped against all odds that I might find some answers, some closure.
As he walked through the hall, surrounded by faces both familiar and unknown, his heart pounded in his chest. He scanned the crowd, a mix of hope and trepidation washing over him.
Could Nguyen be here? Could he possibly recognize me after all these years?
And then he saw him. Across the crowded room, his eyes met those of a man he hadn't seen in over 2 decades. Time had weathered their features, but their eyes, windows to their souls, held the same recognition, the same unspoken bond. It was Nguyen.
He was older now, a man, but in his eyes I saw the scared little boy I had saved.
Their reunion was a torrent of emotions. Words seemed inadequate, unnecessary. They embraced, a hug that transcended language, that spoke of shared pain, of gratitude, of the enduring power of human connection. In that moment, the years melted away, and they were once again a young soldier and a scared little boy, finding solace in each other's presence. They spent hours that day, catching up on lost time, sharing their stories, their pain, their hopes. They spoke of the war, of the scars it had left, but also of the resilience of the human spirit, of the kindness that had bloomed in the midst of destruction.
Our reunion was a testament to the power of forgiveness, of healing, of the bonds that can unite us even in the face of adversity.
The reunion was a turning point for both of them. It brought closure to a painful chapter in their lives. It allowed them to confront their pasts and to embrace the future.
We formed a deep friendship, a bond forged in the fires of war and tempered by time and understanding.
James and Nguyen's story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, humanity can prevail. It is a story of compassion, of courage, of the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity.
Our act of kindness, a single moment of grace in the midst of chaos, echoed through the years, bridging cultures, healing wounds, and proving that even war cannot extinguish the flame of hope.